unshakable, unforgiving, unstoppable. That's what it takes. That's what they never understood. You crossed the line they built in fear, the same line they used to trap themselves in comfort and mediocrity. You went further than they thought was possible. You shattered the limits they silently agreed never to test. Now they're watching, mouths wide open, hearts pounding, begging for it to stop because your rise, your hunger, your fear, it exposes their silence. It exposes every excuse they've ever whispered to themselves in the dark. They're not scared of you. They're scared of what you remind them of. That they could have, but they didn't. That they should have, but they froze. And now, every move you make screams into their ears like thunder. This is what it looks like when someone refuses to quit. You went too far? No. You finally went far enough. And now their panic is just proof that you were right all along. Because when they start shaking, filming, crying out loud, when they beg you to stop, that's when you know you've touched something real. That's when you know the limits weren't real. The pain wasn't real. The fear wasn't real. Only your drive was. Only your vision was. Only the fire in your gut ever mattered. And it burned through everything they said was impossible. Now, before I go further, listen to me closely. If you feel this in your chest, if your pulse is rising right now, if you've ever been doubted, ever been told to stop, ever had to stand alone while they laughed, then this is your story. This isn't just a video, it's a call. A signal to everyone who's ever been told they went too far. And if you've ever felt that, I need you to do something not for me, but for yourself. Subscribe, like, comment. Not because this video is special, but because you are. Because this fire you're feeling isn't just motivation, it's remembrance. A reminder of who you were before they talked you down. Before the world taught you to shrink, before they begged you to be small, so they wouldn't feel so weak standing next to you. Click that button because this isn't entertainment, it's resurrection. Of your courage, of your power, of the version of you that never needed permission to go all the way. They told you to stop, you didn't. And now they're panicking, not because you hurt them, but because you proved you didn't need them. Every excuse they gave you, you crushed it. Every voice that said slow down was just the echo of someone who already gave up. But you didn't flinch. You didn't apologize. You kept going. Too far? That's just what people say when they've never gone far enough themselves. That's the cry of the comfortable, the scream of the spectators. And they're always loudest right before you win. Let them film, let them cry, let them beg, because nothing is louder than silence when the underdog wins, when the person they ignored becomes the one they can't stop watching. That's you now. They have to watch, because their world doesn't make sense anymore without the lie they told themselves about who you were, about who you were supposed to stay. And you destroyed that. You tore through it like it was made of paper. No apology, no hesitation. That's what going too far looks like. You want to know the truth? They need you to stop. Because if you don't, they'll have to confront themselves. They'll have to admit they settled. And most people would rather hate you than face that truth. So they lash out. They say you're reckless, arrogant, obsessive. But really, you're just free. And freedom terrifies those still living in cages. You remind them that they had a key the whole time, and they still chose to sit in the dark. But you broke the lock. You kicked the door down. You walked through the fire and didn't blink. That's why they're freaking out. Not because you're wrong, but because you were right. And they didn't want you to be. They wanted to believe it was impossible so they'd never have to try. They wanted to believe success was luck, not war, not discipline, not a relentless pursuit that tears you apart and stitches you back together stronger. But now you've shown them, you've shown the world, that the line they warned you not to cross was the beginning of your destiny. And now, it's happening. They're scrambling, they're stumbling over their words. They don't know whether to fear you or follow you, because deep down, they feel it. The storm you carry, the undeniable force of someone who refused to break. Someone who didn't listen when they said, "It's too late. You're too much. You're going too far." You smiled, you nodded, and you walked right through the threshold they were too scared to even approach. And now they sit behind screens and whisper warnings, not because you're dangerous, but because your courage is contagious. Because if you can rise from nothing and become this, then what excuse do they have? They wanted you to be quiet. They wanted you to play by the rules. But the rules were written by people who never intended to win. They just wanted to survive. You weren't made for survival. You were built to conquer. And now that you've stopped asking for permission, now that you've refused to fit in their little boxes, the panic has started. The cameras are rolling, their voices are shaking, their pride is crumbling. Because it's hard to act brave when someone else is doing what you said couldn't be done. Every step you take now echoes in their chests. It's a reminder that effort beats opinion, that drive shatters doubt, that someone with vision, obsession, discipline, and pain in their blood can become a walking earthquake, shaking everything built on fear. And you were forged in pressure. You were tempered in silence. While they laughed, you learned. While they rested, you suffered. While they posted, you practiced. And now you're so far ahead, they have to beg you to stop, just so they can breathe. But you're not done, are you? Because this isn't about revenge. This isn't about proving them wrong anymore. This is about proving yourself right. That voice you had as a kid, the one that whispered, "You're meant for more," it was never lying. The world tried to smother it, tried to drown it in criticism, mediocrity, and fear. But now, that voice is a war cry. And every time you take another step, another risk, another brutal, agonizing leap forward, that voice gets louder. It shakes the ground they thought was stable. It burns down the lies they built to feel safe. And still, you keep going. They said you went too far when you trained past exhaustion, when you woke up before dawn and stayed long after everyone else quit. They said you went too far when you stopped showing up to their games, their gossip, their one more drink nights, when you turned down comfort and chose isolation. But you knew what they never would, that nothing extraordinary is born in comfort, that greatness demands everything. And now, you are the result. You are the product of every sacrifice, every tear you never let fall, every scream you swallowed just to keep moving. And suddenly they care. Suddenly, they notice. But not because they support you, because they fear you. You are a reflection of who they could have been if they hadn't said no so many times, if they hadn't flinched, if they hadn't chosen later over now. You are their alternate timeline. That's why they film you. That's why they beg you to stop. Because every second you rise is another second they sink deeper into regret. And that's not your burden to carry. You didn't come this far to carry their guilt. You came this far because something inside you refused to accept the script of failure, of average, of normal. You burned that script a long time ago. And now you write your own, not with ink, but with blood, sweat, and cyst scars. And every word you write shakes the ones who never dared to pick up a pen. You want the truth? They will keep begging, they will keep filming, they will keep pointing fingers and saying, "You've gone too far." Not because you have, but because they never will. And that's what scares them most. Let them tremble. Let them point their cameras and whisper behind their screens. Let them panic. Because that panic is proof that what you've done cannot be undone, that what you've become cannot be ignored. They thought you would disappear. They thought this was a phase. They thought the hunger would die the way theirs did. But yours didn't. Yours became sharper. And now you're not just chasing something, you've become something, and that terrifies them. You've become the proof that transformation is possible, that a nobody can become a force of nature, that someone written off can write their own legend, in scars and sweat and relentless action. They hate it because you are what they promised themselves they'd be 10 years ago. They watch you because you are a mirror showing them everything they refuse to do. They don't want to be inspired. They want to be distracted. But you don't give them distraction. You give them disruption. You are the break in the pattern. You are the silence between the noise that reminds them of their own voice, the one they haven't listened to in years. And still, you don't stop. That's what breaks them. It's not that you succeeded, it's that you keep going. When most people would celebrate, you go back into the shadows. When they would scream for attention, you go silent and sharpen your edge. You're not chasing validation. You've killed the part of yourself that needed to be liked. That's why they can't control you. That's why the begging starts. Because if you can't be distracted, you can't be defeated. If they can't slow you down with praise or poison you with doubt, then you become untouchable. And that's when fear takes over. That's when they realize they're not watching someone who's simply motivated. They're watching someone who's transformed. They say you went too far because it's easier than admitting they never went far enough. They say you changed, but of course you did. You were never meant to stay where you started. You were never meant to be small, polite, and predictable. You were meant to evolve, meant to outgrow the cages they decorated as comfort. And now, every time you rise, they shrink. Because you're not part of their system anymore. You're not playing the game they built. You're playing something deeper, something primal, something holy. You're playing for legacy. This isn't about today. This isn't about trends or clout or applause. This is about every moment you swore you wouldn't die forgotten. Every night you stared at the ceiling and promised yourself you'd make it out. Every time you were ignored, humiliated, underestimated, and said nothing. Just waited, learned, prepared. This is your vengeance, not with violence, but with dominance. Not through revenge, but through undeniable presence. You became something they cannot erase, and they're begging you to stop, because if you keep going, you'll become something worse than a winner. You'll become a reminder of what they gave up on. And nothing haunts a person like the ghost of their potential. So go further. They'll cry out again. They'll say it's too much, that you're obsessed, that you've become unrelatable. But let them say it. Their pain is not your ceiling. Their comfort is not your calling. They have the right to stay where they are. You have the right to become what they never will. And you know what's coming next. The silence. Once they realize you won't stop. Once they see the begging doesn't slow you. Once the fear turns to awe. They won't admit it out loud. They never do. But they'll start watching closer. They'll stop mocking and start mimicking. They'll tell others they always believed in you. But you'll remember. You'll remember the silence. You'll remember the laughs. You'll remember the moment they begged you to stop, just because you reminded them of everything they could have been if they'd just tried. And through all of it, you will not break. You will not slow. You will not flinch. Because the pain you carry has become fuel. Because the shame you once felt is now armor. Because the very things they said would destroy you became the exact reason you won. This is your edge, the line between you and them. They begged for ease, you bled for clarity. They begged for comfort, you begged for more weight, more pressure, more pain. Because deep inside, you knew what they didn't. That pressure builds diamonds only in the hands of those who don't let go. They're watching now, afraid, amazed, and still begging. But it's too late. You already passed the point of no return. The begging doesn't matter anymore. The noise is irrelevant because you didn't come this far to explain yourself. You didn't suffer for understanding. You didn't sacrifice everything just to be accepted by people who've never risked anything. You came to take what was yours. You came to answer the call that kept you up at night, the one that whispered louder than their warnings, the one that refused to die, no matter how many times you tried to live normal. And now, that voice is no longer a whisper. It's a roar. It is you. It is your presence in every room. It is your footsteps behind every success. It is your silence behind every win. And it's why they can't breathe when you walk in. Because they know you went beyond them, beyond their doubt, beyond the fence they built around what was reasonable. You don't belong to their comfort anymore. You don't belong to the timeline they assigned you. You don't belong to their permission or their schedule. You belong to the fight. You belong to the climb. You belong to the mission. And that mission is far from over. They think this is the peak. They think this is where you stop, where you enjoy the view and finally become reasonable. But they don't know. This is still your beginning, because you're not chasing a moment. You're chasing immortality, and not the kind they write about in history books, the kind that burns in the hearts of those who see you and remember, the kind of immortality that happens when your name becomes a warning and a weapon, when your story becomes a sermon, when your work becomes legend, and legend doesn't ask for applause. Legend keeps building while others rest. Legend keeps walking while others sleep. Legend doesn't pause for applause or permission. It just continues, unapologetic, unstoppable, undeniable. So let them scream, let them film, let them try to make you doubt, let them beg. Because in the noise of their desperation is the proof that you've shaken something deep, something primal. They begged you to stop, not because of what you're doing, but because of what it means. Your existence breaks their pattern. Your success destroys their excuse. Your pain, publicly endured and privately conquered, invalidates every reason they've given for staying the same. And that is why they'll never say your name without feeling something. Envy, admiration, regret, fear, but never indifference. And that is the power you've earned. They said you went too far, but you didn't go far enough. Not yet, because you're not done. You're not close. There is still more mountain to climb, still more fight in your bones, still more fire in your breath. And every time you think about slowing down, remember the faces, the ones who said you were too intense, the ones who laughed when you started, the ones who fell silent when you didn't quit. Remember their voices cracking, their tone shaking, their words trembling as they said, "Please, stop." And then remember That was the moment you knew you were unstoppable. You are no longer a person. You are a force. You are no longer asking. You are taking. You are no longer hoping. You are deciding. You are no longer seeking approval. You are demanding impact. This is what it means to go too far. It means you've reached the place where average people are terrified to exist. It means you've become what they were too scared to imagine. It means you've built something out of nothing, and no one can take it from you. So don't slow down. Don't look back. Don't let their panic become your hesitation. They will beg. They will bargain. They will try to soften you. Let them. But you keep walking through the noise, through the fear, through the storm. Because one day they will tell your story, and they'll say, you were too much, too intense, too dangerous. But they'll never say you were ordinary, and that means you won. So, here you are, at the end, but not really. Because there is no end for someone like you. There's only next, only further, only more. You've already crossed every line they told you not to. You've already broken every rule that was meant to keep you small. And now, they don't know what to do with you. They can't box you in. They can't label you. They can't stop you. So they panic. They freeze. They beg. Because your presence means change. And change makes people uncomfortable. But you were never here to keep anyone comfortable. You were here to become, to evolve, to conquer the old version of yourself and bury the lies that held you there. You were here to rip open the skin of who you used to be and step out reborn, louder, stronger, hungrier. You were told to stop. You were told it was too much, that your ambition made people uneasy, that your focus was intimidating, that your work ethic was obsessive. But you didn't stop. You didn't flinch. You turned their fear into fuel. You turned isolation into ignition. You turned every moment they doubted you into bricks. And you built a throne. And now you sit where they said you never would. Not because it was easy, not because someone handed it to you, but because you refused to break, because you refused to listen, because deep down, even on your worst days, you still believed, you still moved, you still chose pain over comfort, growth over validation, truth over approval. And now, all they can do is watch, mouths open, eyes wide, recording, whispering, panicking, because nothing is louder than the silence of someone who didn't quit. Nothing is more powerful than the calm of someone who has nothing left to prove and everything left to do. That's you now. You're not the same. You've gone too far for them to follow. And maybe that's how it was always meant to be. Because not everyone deserves access to your destination. Some were only ever meant to watch your rise from a distance, shaking, stunned, and begging for you to return to the level you outgrew. But you won't, because you're not going back. You're not stepping down. You're not lowering your fire to warm people who chose the cold. You gave them time. You gave them silence. You gave them patience. But now, you give them only distance. You give them a legacy too bright to look at. You give them something they can't understand and can never stop. So keep walking, keep building, keep breaking limits. And when the next wave of voices come, when they cry out again, when they say, "You've gone too far," smile, because you'll know what that really means. It means you've leveled up again. It means they still can't reach you. It means you're still becoming something greater than they ever believed was possible. You went too far. And that's exactly what greatness looks like. Now leave them with their fear. and take everything they said you couldn't have.